Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I will be joined here very shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. And tonight we have on I affectionately call him our resident economist, Mr. Mike Lampel will be joining us as well. We're going to talk about the shape of what we think may be coming down the pike as far as the future is concerned with the economy. A lot of strange things have been going on since the last time we checked in with Mike. I think we got another interest rate hike from the Feds, and a couple of other different things. I think we may be. We'll see if we're going to turn the corner. If we may be able to, if he thinks that we may be able to avoid a recession, or are we actually quote unquote in a recession, or what the state of everything is. We'll get into all of that stuff. But in the meantime and in between time, I need you guys to do a couple of things for me. I need for you guys to like the show, subscribe to the show, and share it. And if you don't mind, hit the bell notification. That way you get notified whenever we get ready to go live and we come up on board and get on the air. If you hit the notification button, you'll get all of the notifications 10 to 15 minutes before we get ready to come on live. And with that being said, and without any further ado, I'm welcoming in my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Good evening, Chuck. How are you?
We're doing great, Rico. How are you, buddy?
I tell you what, I'm doing pretty good. I'm kind of excited for tonight's show. It's been a little while since we had a chance to check in with Mike. And like I said, it's been a lot of stuff that has transpired since the last time that we had him on. And so it's really going to be I think, a really interesting show from that standpoint to kind of get an idea of the lay of the land for what may be coming down the pike.
And yeah, you know what? The crap seems to be heading our way quicker than softballs at a batting cage.
Yeah, some things look like it may be easing, but I'm not quite sure. So it's always a good way to kind of judge all that stuff is to look at the economic indicators, and yep. I think Mike is the man of the hour for that.
He certainly is. He knows his stuff, and he's well read, and he keeps pretty current.
So with that being said, we'll go ahead and welcome our resident economist back to the show. Good evening, Mike. How are you?
I'm not a resident economist. I'm a crazy guy. I'm a crazy guy. He's got to be good. It's like, for me, it's like, Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, had a great saying. He said, the only difference about my prediction about the economy and yours is just my guess is a little better.
Well, I tell you what, with all of the stuff that's going on, it definitely helps to have a little bit more of an educated guess as to what is going on and what's maybe transpiring, what's coming down the pike. I think the last time that we had you on, I think we may have gotten one or two more interest rate hikes since the last time we had you on, and definitely would like to know what your impression is as far as what are we actually in a quasi recession, or do you think we may be able to avoid
it? Well, the old joke. What's the difference between depression and a recession?
Enlighten us.
Okay, a recession is when my neighbor loses his job. A depression is when I lose my job.
A lot of that's been going on here lately too, right, with the layoffs with Facebook.
Well, no, the big one is the manufacturing company in North Carolina.
Oh. Yes,
that's the biggie.
That's the start of that's the shot, the first shot. But on top of that, and I think everybody's heard about this. I think it's called United Furniture, and I think there's 2,700 people lost their jobs overnight. And then to make things even more complicated and even worse, I don't know what you gentlemen have heard, but there's the potential for a rail strike, the Class 1 rail strike in the U.S., and they're talking about, and this is really serious, a shortage because a shortage of both DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, and diesel fuel.
Yeah.
As a result of this potential rail strike, and now it's gone to Congress to pass something, and I'm going to guess right now, and I'm only guessing, President of the United States, who sent it to Congress, he's eating excuse my language on the air, but he's eating a shit sandwich, because his backers were the unions. And now he
Right.
realizes that, there's a whole country at stake, because this would put, if we don't have diesel exhaust fluid for trucks, that everything comes to a grinding halt.
Ah.
Well, no, I mean, look, these things are always there, but I mean, it's a lot more complicated and, excuse the expression, fluid. The situation is very fluid. But the one thing you should never, ever, ever underestimate is a politician's ability to survive.
This is
You know,
true.
if a politician has to French kiss an alligator in order to get reelected, he'll do it.
Oh yeah. Good point.
This is definitely true. So so with all that being said, Mike, like I say, what do you think as far as the recession, the recession situation? Do you think we actually are in a recession, or is it fastly approaching? The big guy over at Amazon, he's putting out tweets and different things and saying, "Hey,
oh
don't
God,
buy."
yeah. Well, listen, that guy makes in a second what you and I make in a lifetime. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, but to be honest with you, he is a great person to follow in the business you're in, right? Because if you know the Amazon story, remember, he made his money from good old distribution.
Right.
That man didn't invent the damn thing.
No.
He just realized distribution was the key. And then he did something really smart. He went and stole everybody from Walmart.
And they're great. These guys are brilliant at distributing.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, the motto, I mean, a lot of people don't realize this, but Walmart is not a department store.
No, it's
Walmart
a logistics.
is actually, it's the world's largest logistics company.
Yes. Yep.
So, and remember, they coined the phrase of one in, one out.
Yep.
So, if you're gonna know what the world distribution is like, well, that's easy. Follow what Amazon's doing and follow what Walmart's doing, and you pretty much have the bookends of what these guys think distribution is going to look like in the future.
So let's try to maybe take a look at this thing. Let's maybe take a zoom in a little bit and try to. I think maybe let's have a discussion about tonight as far as the different modes of transportation. We'll break it down and say dry van, flatbed, and reefer. I guess we'll start off with dry van since that's the most common. What do you think about as far as the future in the economy with things that may be moved on a dry van? What do you kind of?
Well, I still think what you have right now is a massive bottleneck of, how can I put it politely, stupidity, right? You've got 40 years of failed policies where rail lines were not expanded. Yep. Nobody studied demographics. Everybody thought offshoring was going to be permanent, so therefore just invest in a massive amount of ports and just build distribution out of ports. Nobody in their right mind thought this was ever going to come back. Right? So I think as far as over the road, it's going to be over the road for our lifetime, if not more, because unless they figure a way to take 53 footers and move them across the country without a driver, it's going to be over the road.
Happening.
Well, it'll be back. It can if it goes on the rail, but that's only if they start building rail lines.
Right.
Then you got another problem. I mean, Canada, we're suffering that problem badly from the people who are green, which was we have no pipelines. So in Canada, a good example, we got two rail companies, CN and CP. But 30 years ago, we were shipping about 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 barrels of oil a day over rail. Now we ship 500,000 a day. Right. So you got basically politicians who kissed the alligator every 4 years, and then went home and collected more money. But so and you have a massive shortage of drivers. Demographics is hitting it up. So I'm not, but I think what we're learning is that you're either going to be a recession or a depression. And a recession is when your competitor goes out of business. Depression when you go out of business.
Yeah.
So it's still, you still recommend the sage advice that we gave out before is, which is always good advice. Try to get as lean as you possibly can.
Keep an eye on AR.
Cut your expenses. Pay as much stuff off as you possibly can, and try to.
But your expenses are your expenses. Those are things you try every single day to control. Those are very important. But what's changing is your customers. They are changing rapidly. So think of all those brothers and sisters out there who had a lot of money owed to them by Lane Furniture and these guys.
Gone.
You can only imagine the pain a lot of them are going to go through now. Right? And they're not going to get their money, are they? So let's be clear about that.
It's bankrupt. It's done. It's history.
Yeah.
There were signs. They got rid of their I think their CFO and CEO back in June. Those were the first. There was some irregularities, and
but there were a lot of irregularities. But I just want to interrupt, Chuck. So I just want to give you a tip to you guys as to how to keep an eye on all your clients. And Mr. Google is going to help you. Okay. What everybody, I don't know if people know this, but if you go into Google Chrome and you go look for notifications, you can type in the name of your clients and it will send you updates whenever there's anything happening to your clients through Google.
Right.
So if you look at your top 80% of your business, you can actually tell Google, here's the name of each business, send me a notification every time these guys hit the news.
Yeah.
So we're starting to notice. I know that I'm from people that I've talked to, and you know I'm in a blessed situation. I haven't realized it because I do primarily food, but I talk to the different people that I talk to on a day in and day out basis. I got a couple of buddies that pull tankers. I got some buddies that all different modes of operation, and they are definitely seeing a little bit more of a slowdown when it comes to things of that nature. But so that's why I was trying to see if maybe we can break down and talk about. So we looking at dry vans. Definitely, most of your raw materials and stuff like that will go on a dry van. Recycled paper, all that type of stuff, and just anything that doesn't necessarily require temperature control, but it needs to be in a covered environment. Would definitely go on a dry van. So you're gonna have some food stuff like canned goods and stuff like that definitely moving on dry vans. So when it comes to that segment of the trucking population, are those guys going to be experiencing more of a what's the word that I'm looking for here? How deep or how deep do you think that they're going to feel this recession?
Well, first of all, what's going to happen now is that the economy, look, we've had for about 20, 25 years, and remember, I explained the economy as a train, right?
Right.
And a recession is when the train slows down. A depression is when the train gets derailed. Okay. So 2008, we had a massive depression. The thing just went flying off the rails. Yeah. And it took it, and I got to credit the Bush and I got to give credit to Obama, which is, these guys realized we got to slow down the pain and figure a way to get the cars back on the rail. And they did it in pretty good time. Like, within 3-4 years, they had the train back on the rails.
Okay.
Right. I mean, but if you look back at 1929, it took like 30 years to get it back on the rail.
Right.
Right. So these guys did it in 4 years. But I think what's going to happen now is you're going to get different types of the economy. So, I mean, there's a lot of talk online. You hear about housing. So if you got brothers and sisters out there hauling materials for housing, don't worry about housing. It's maybe slowing down, but it ain't stopping.
Right. Because we need houses.
Well, basically, the whole world is shifting west.
Right.
Right. I mean, you could always live on the border of Poland and Ukraine, but it's not a very environmental place. So, and Europe's going to have its problems. So what you're getting is the world is shifting westward. And that means North America is going to be the pivotal stop. As you guys can see on your southern border, and as we can see in our country too, they're taking our immigration from about 350, 360,000 a year. They're increasing to 500,000.
And we need a place for them to live.
Right. And remember, we're a population of about 36 million people. So if you put the 500,000 in conjunction, that's equal to 5 million new Americans coming in every year. Right. Man. But we have the one defense you guys don't have. We have February in the border. So I don't know what you guys got. So if you're looking at your business, you got to look at which part of the economy you're serving. As you said, you're in food.
Right.
right?
Food only gets better because people, I think what happens is if you get recessionary times, I think people, instead of eating steak, are eating more pasta and beans, and they go in dry bands.
Well, they do and they don't, because meat is still going to be there. But I think the next issue is going to become raw materials, right? Which is the housing,
Right.
steel, all those things. Then you got other things, in high tech and all that stuff. So I think long term, the transportation industry of the United States is actually going to do really well. It's going to do well because you're going back. I mean, to give you an idea, back about 20 years ago, less than 50% of the US economy was services. The majority was still manufacturing. You're going back to that.
Yep.
You're going
Yeah.
back into the manufacturing sector.
Michael,
Services
is
and
that
materials
what's
are going to continue.
causing? Excuse me. Is that what is causing some of this inflation? Is the fact that we are? I think they call it, the term is reshoring. We're bringing these industries back, and now all of a sudden, rather than having a 4-year-old kid working a plant in Asia somewhere,
Yep.
now all of a sudden you've got an adult working at a plant in Ohio that gets paid $23 an hour. So now, instead of it being 4 cents an hour in Asia or somewhere else, now all of a sudden your costs have gone up thousandfold for your labor component. Is that what's bringing on some of this inflation as well?
Well, I personally don't think this is inflation. All right. I think this is just where prices should have been all along. I mean, if you go back to 2000 earlier, when things were being offshored into Asia, they were doing it for cost reason. But then what they did was they stopped increasing wages in the United States, as you guys all know, right? I mean, the median income didn't increase. People were heavily in debt. Credit was flowing like, credit was flowing Niagara Falls, like no problem. So people began to think of credit as a substitute for income. So employers didn't need to raise income because their people would just go get more credit. But if you take a wage as an example, when I graduated university and I sold trucking, actually, I chose trucking services, which I met Chuck. My starting wage in 1987 was $27,000.
And that was a good wage in 1987.
Right. So if you applied 5% rate of inflation to $27,000, today would be about $65,000, which is where it should be as a starting wage coming out of university, at an arts degree, whatever. So when you're looking at those factors, you're saying, well, really, all its prices are doing is they're coming back to where they should have been had we simply kept adjusting for the inflation every year.
But we didn't. We ignored it.
But we did. Right. We did. We loved the $9.99 T-shirts made in China. We loved all that stuff. So therefore, nobody was going to their employer and says, pay me more. But now they are.
I got want to just public service announcement, little housekeeping real quick. If you guys,
Sure.
the audience, if you got a question, you can type your question into the chat, or I just dropped the link into the chat room. If you want to come up and on board and join us on video, we got a couple of slots available. If you would like to do that, you can click the link, and we'll bring you up and on board. And if you got a question for Michael, Chuck, or myself, feel free to go ahead and join us at any time. There's no such thing as a dumb or stupid question, and we always welcome your input. With that being said, Michael, the with this new economy, everything, something
That's a good word. Yeah.
with people are, still wanting to stay at home, work from home, all the different things of that nature. How big of an effect is that having going back to the office and things of that nature? How, with the way that the economy is kind of shifting from a lot of people that are doing those type of jobs and wanting to stay in that situation, how much is that having an effect on the economy as well?
Well, I mean, again, it changes the nature of consumption, right? That's what it does. It changes the nature of consumption, as you can see, because you guys just had Black Monday, and that was a $9 billion day. So that's going to be a lot of packages being shipped out.
Right.
Right. But I think what companies have learned, I mean, Mr. Musk certainly learned that, begging them to come back to work. And they said, yeah, stick it where the sun don't shine. I'm not coming back to the office. But at the same time, this is a weird thing. All the people staying at home, earning the same income they did when they're staying at home, just got a 20% pay increase.
Right.
Right. Because after all, I'm not buying lunch. I'm not paying gas. I'm not paying
dry
parking. I'm
cleaning,
not buying clothes. Yeah, I just got a 20% pay increase. So Mr. Musk should shut up and just let them stay at home, because it's equal to getting them 20% pay increase. By the way, Facebook tried that. They said to all the guys, if you're not coming back to work and you moved away to Tennessee or other places which are lower cost, I'm going to reduce your pay by 20%. And they said, yeah, stick that where the metaverse don't shine.
Wow. Wow.
And he had to back off of that real fast, because they said, yeah, why? Because pandemic, I moved out to Tennessee, and Tennessee is cheaper. You're going to pay me less? I'm a software engineer. I'm out of here. So what's going to happen now is the nature of consumption will change, which means the trucking will change.
Right.
Smaller rigs. Right? Smaller rigs are going to be more. If you're going to do a P&D, if you're going to be a city driver, you're going to do a lot more smaller rigs. You're not going to be able to haul 46 footers in the middle of Tennessee, in the middle of Nashville.
So that's kind of where the explosion of the box truck is coming from.
Yeah.
And you know what else? Get ready, guys, because you finally have competition, and it's not coming from the truck.
Drones, right?
Heavy lifting drones.
Yes.
They could lift up to 1,000 pounds.
Really?
Well, I tell you, with all this technology, boy.
I told you, if you want to see where trucking is going, follow Walmart, follow Amazon. You got both. You got the long haulers on the Walmart side. You got the short haulers on the Amazon side.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. That is definitely interesting.
There's certainly a lot of talk about, and they've talked about it for years, drone deliveries. And I know that as we're talking right now, Walmart is doing it in Bentonville, Arkansas. They're doing drone deliveries, and I guess they're going to work the bugs out of it. I haven't heard anything other than that press release that got leaked out. And there was a little bit of stuff after with Loblaws, the Loblaw Grocery Corporation, running some autonomous trucks from a distribution center to stores, or from a DC to a DC. I haven't heard anything else. I don't know whether that was a short-lived publicity stunt or it's going on now. I have no idea, because we're getting into winter driving conditions, especially in southern Ontario. And you would think, living in Canada, Canadians would be used to it, but for some reason, as soon as we get snow on the ground, certain Canadians in certain cities forget how to drive.
Well, to give you an idea, one company is called ZM Interactive,
right?
And it has been testing drones lifting up to 1,000 pounds, and it's based in San Francisco, not in China.
It's going to be a real game changer, though, because I guess what I'm thinking about, not to be doom and gloom or nothing like that, but the whole thing with going on with, if an accident, something like that happens to happen, God forbid, and you got 1,000 pounds just up in the air.
Yeah,
that comes down on somebody's house or.
Yeah, I was just thinking that they're lifting a refrigerator over my house, and something happens, and the refrigerator comes and caves in. He's making a delivery to the guy next door. I'd be pretty upset.
Maybe. Then you call a lawyer.
Great. And the lawyer gets a sailboat.
Of course he does. Man, I used to have clients. By the way, as a side joke to you about lawyers, I used to go out with a lot of lawyers. A lot of buddy of mine is a lawyer. But one night I'm having dinner with these guys, and believe me, I felt naked because I didn't bring my lawyer to dinner. There were 3 lawyers with me. And the guys are looking at each other saying, I got a 20-footer. I got a 40-footer. I got a 60-footer. I said, what are you guys talking about? Oh, that's how we're measuring our cases. This case will pay for 20-foot boat. This won't pay for a 40-foot one. They're measuring it by feet of boats they're going to buy with the case. So I can tell you, there are going to be a lot of lawyers praying for falling fridges.
Well, speaking of buying equipment, things seem to be coming back down to earth with the prices of equipment. There seems to be more equipment slowly starting to come back available. We talked a little bit about the Fed and everything. Let's talk a little bit about maybe if someone is in a position where they have to, or they need to, or time to maybe upgrade the fleet, do some, it may be time to buy or whatever. They find themselves in that position. What's your advice on that front, and especially with
that's Chuck all the way.
I'm coming at it from a standpoint of as far as banking is concerned. Are you going to be able? Are interest rates? Are
Yeah.
there still going to be decent interest rates to be had out there, or the availability of credit is that still tightening, or is it still somewhat still available for people to be able to go out and grab some decent credit terms and be able to still get some equipment, invest in their business?
Well, I look at now at companies, freight companies, which are service companies and everything else, but I look at them now in three different levels of credit. I look at it as CapEx credit, I look at it as operational credit, and I look at it as financing credit, right? So financing credit is the AR terms you give your clients, right? Operating capital is what you need for fuel and rigs, not rigs, sorry, fuel and trailers, which are lower CapEx. Then you go to CapEx, which is the building and the trucks. Then that's a capital expenditure. So you look at all three of them. The good news is on the lower end of it, right? So first off, and I think Chuck has spoken about this brilliantly many times, is be very, very careful with the accounting financing, the financing the receivables through factoring companies and all that, and do your mathematics. And I think what Chuck should do is one day give everybody a tutorial here on how to properly calculate factoring, because I think a lot of guys don't know how to calculate factoring well. Is that correct, Chuck?
Yeah, it's what they don't realize when they do it over a year how much that money. And I realize there's times to do it, but be careful what contracts you're getting into. And my to sum it up with factoring, if you're going to use a factor, use it when you need it. Try not to get tied up giving all your receivables to a factor. If you can possibly avoid doing that, you'll have a lot more freedom, because when you tie up everything, then even your accounts you have that want to do a quick pay, you're going to still you'll get paid right away from your client or broker, but you're still going to have to pay the factoring company.
Yeah, but I have a question for you, Chuck. Is factoring non-recourse? So in other
Well,
words,
there's two types. There's
Yeah.
recourse and there's non-recourse.
I think
Okay.
you want to explain to the guys here what non-recourse and recourse are to our
Well,
listeners.
okay, so with non-recourse, that means that if something happens, it's non-recourse. So that means that you know what, you don't have to worry about it.
You mean the guy
If,
didn't pay the
I mean,
bill to the
if
company?
you had sold United Furniture's paper to a factoring company and on non-recourse, you don't own it. The factoring company ate it, and c'est la vie. If it's recourse, and you got received money from the factoring company on those accounts, those bills that you sold them, you basically lease the money you didn't sell your receivable. You basically leased your receivable. You rented it to them, and nothing more. That's the most simplistic term I can use. You rented your receivable, and they never paid it, so you need to pay it. So now you get hit, and you've got to, there are some carriers out there that are probably going to, I haven't seen any of the creditor lists. I'm sure it'll be coming out sooner rather than later, but I'm sure there's a lot of little trucking companies and brokers that got hit pretty hard because they were a huge shipper. They have 3,000 people or 2,700
Right.
people working for them.
And what's the spread between the recourse and non-recourse? In other words, one is risk-free, one has risk. So
It's,
what's the
you know
spread?
what? It's probably somewhere about 3% difference.
Yeah, three
On
to
a monthly
five.
basis?
Yeah, so you're somewhere between
That's
on
about 35% over the year.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
three to
Michael,
five.
very good. It's exactly what it is.
36% over the course
I
of the
don't
year.
think we have a listener and maybe we do, but I don't think we have a listener on this show, and I don't think we ever have, that makes 35% a year.
So to put this into context to our listeners, what that means is if you're selling a $100,000 paper to a factoring company with non-recourse, you're going to get $64,000 on that $100,000 sale.
Over a year. That's right.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I tell people you're better off if you need the float. Hell, you're better off putting it on a credit card.
Oh yeah, go get yourself.
That's 30% a year.
Yes, because the most a credit card is, if I'm not mistaken, Michael, you tell me,
29%.
is it 29% now? So it's just over, okay, it's 29%. Well, 29% is a hell of a lot cheaper than 35%. And you don't have
And
any contract, you just pay it back.
But if you're smart and
and
you got good credit, if you go to like the credit unions or something like
but
that, you can get business credit cards somewhere in the ballpark
right.
of 14 to 15%.
But I'm going to share some with you guys, and for our listeners today too. You're going to love this one. Why do you think all credit cards stop at 29%?
I think
No,
is I think over 30 anything over 30% that's mafia
Usury.
no, that's loan sharking.
loan sharking. That's
So then, what do you call factoring companies?
hey, legalize
Well,
loan
it's the
sharking.
same as those, you know what, factoring, guys, it's the same business really as those check cashing services.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the exact same business, except one is for individuals and one is for corporations. And of course, these check cashing services, they take advantage of the most vulnerable people in our society that don't really have enough money to make ends meet at the end of the week.
Well, and another way I like to talk about it too sometimes is to tell people, it's just like when you're looking at um, advertisements to buy a car. They never really advertise the price of the car. They advertise a payment.
Right.
Because the payment is like, oh, this is palatable. And
Right.
so,
Bi-weekly, Rico. I want to add that one. That never existed before. Now it's only $482 per month. Bi-weekly.
No, but which, by the way, guys, funny thing is 26 payments, not 24.
Right.
Let's be clear. Bi-weekly is 26. People keep it's no bozo. It's 26 payments.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like now you get on an airplane. It's like, yeah, you want to breathe? That's extra.
All spirit air.
Now they're going to start charging you extra just not to sit with your wife. Right?
Yes.
So it's sort of like, oh, you want to sit next to your wife? Oh, that's free of charge.
Michael, let me ask you something. What is your opinion? All the automakers throughout the world, really, it's not just a North American phenomenon. I know that even some of the luxury brands, if I'm not mistaken, Jaguar has now gotten away from internal combustion engines, which is too bad because they built their cars had some questions through the years, but they built a damn good gasoline engine. That was the strong part of the car. Now they're all going to electric. My understanding is when you're manufacturing electric cars, you have nowhere near the components. And that's going to really change the world for the boys and girls out there that haul automotive parts, because you really don't have, you've got a battery instead of everything that, everything that goes with an internal combustion engine.
Well, that's really the biggest change. I mean, the biggest change in the automotive world, of course, especially when it comes to transportation, is the majority of the stuff you guys hauled were components.
Yes.
Right. So if you look now at the total number of components going into an EV versus the total number of components going into a gas car, totally different, completely different, right? From the drivetrains to the axles to all of it, to the engine components, to all of it. So I'm not really sure what percentage of the car is reduced by the number of components yet, but I do know that more than 25% of sales are now EVs. So that's already having an effect, right? And the governments in various states, including in Canada, are trying to figure out how do we get these guys to move their plants up here. We're going to give you ton loads of money, and they only have, listen, buddy, it's like, and there's a but. I think in a certain way, this is a positive thing for trucking, because what that means is for all those guys who for years were slaves to the low rates of the car companies because they needed the steady freight, can now move away to be more productive in other areas.
I got a question though. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but it's just something. And I think
I'll make it up. Don't worry, I'll make it up.
I think you might have even actually touched on this last time we talked about some of this stuff. With all these electric, everybody's trying to go electric and everything. What the hell are we going to do with all the batteries when they die?
The same thing we do with everything else. Put it in a land refill and build a school on top of it. I mean, and then 40 years later go, oops, did we do that? right?
But isn't that worse for the environment? I mean, I would think that that's worse
Well,
for the environment because
It
you know
is.
well, no,
what?
it is. It is because also one of the things I think is really the positive side to all this is that an engine is an engine. So the car companies predominantly over the last 100 years were trying to see who can make a more powerful engine, who can make a more fuel. They
Right,
all worked around the engines, okay, but they never moved away from gas because they're all internal combustion engines,
right.
okay. But with the electric vehicles, it's a chemical thing. So you have so many companies out there who are testing different ways of doing this. And they're testing it ways because each one of them is trying to increase the efficiency of the battery, longer life, faster charging, more mileage. But to do that, they got to play with the chemical compound. And maybe either somebody will have a complete nuclear meltdown or somebody will invent the best battery ever done that will run for 4,000 miles. Already look at the gradual increase in the mileage they're getting out of batteries and look at the speed they're doing this in, right?
Right.
In less than 10 years, they've gone from like 150-mile range up to 300, 350-mile range. They've gone from overnight charging to 18-minute supercharges. So there's going to be a lot of scientific breakthroughs, I think, and I hope, in that area, which will help the economy, which will help the environment, which we need that. But at the same time, I do believe that when we look at the auto industry, especially the auto industry, and I count them the most, is they pretty much had truckers as slaves. Truckers needed those low rates, and they took those jobs that paid them barely a profit just because they needed the paycheck.
Because it was voluminous. Yeah. And you could get real big because auto parts consumed an awful lot of trucks.
Yeah,
So you could
But
build a business around an auto plant, and a big business. And, if you were a good operator at the end of the day, there you could make some money.
what
Um,
kind? What
sorry, go ahead, Rico.
what kind of insight do you have as far as because from what I heard that we're so far behind infrastructurally wise as far as being able to have proper charging stations because
Yeah,
I've heard especially like they talking about they're talking about for big rigs and stuff like that, but I've heard that in order to have a real proper charging station that those stations can take as much power and electricity as it would to power a large arena.
yeah. No,
sure.
you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, electricity ain't free. I don't care how they do this.
And it's not clean either to produce it.
Well, it depends. I mean, that's why there's going to be a lot of micronuclear plants everywhere. Micronuclear is going to be the big thing. Those are going to be small nuclear power plants all over the place, right? I wish I could tell you that you could build all the solar farms you want, but man, that's not, and all the wind that's not going to generate the kind of power that a nuclear plant's going to generate,
No,
not
no.
even by a long shot, right?
Hmm.
So, but again, that does not mean that this is permanent because the longer they stretch out the mileage, the longer as they get more, hopefully they develop very green technology out of that. But when I look at our brothers and sisters who are out there carrying loads, things are going to change. So you got to really know your clients. You got to know what market you're serving. You got to understand. And here's the interesting part: for all those people who lost money on the furniture company, the ones who probably were okay were the ones who probably were up to date on what's going on in the furniture world. In other words, you now have got to understand the market you're serving
Right.
because it's going to change fast.
Yeah. I agree. You have to know your customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Gino. I'm not sure how much it would. I don't have an EV
Oh,
car.
it's a fraction of what it costs to refill a gas car. It's a fraction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure of the numbers, but I mean, I can get the numbers, but I think it's like 10% of what it costs to. But again, here's the kicker, though, right? Ain't nothing free. So let's take a look at if you got an EV car. Okay. Remember, you have a car, you have a gas engine. If you take care of that engine, it's going to last 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
right? as my friend Chuck would know, because he keeps on carrying his engines in the back of his car. When he likes the engine, he goes and builds it, take it back.
I'm kind of a redneck that way. I don't sell my old cars. I keep them.
I've been with Chuck one time when we were driving somewhere, and I look at the back of the truck. Why is there an engine in the back there? I'm rebuilding it. He just loved the truck. He's like, it's sort of, Chuck looks at an engine like the sole of his favorite boots. I'm not throwing out the boots. I'm going to go get it rebuilt. I'm going to put it back on my boots. But I think when you're looking at the cost of an EV, but what's not free is that when you, unlike an engine, when you have to replace those batteries, it's like $20,000.
Right.
Yeah. So you either pay, you know what? You either pay at the pump now, or when that battery finally dies, you're going to, all that money you saved at the pump, you're going to pay it all at once. Nobody rides for free.
And I'll be curious as to what they would. Does that include a disposal fee for the battery that you're pulling out, or that just for the new battery? Because I'd imagine.
Well, that's still a lot of money
for a battery. Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? And I think some of the cars, the more luxurious cars, like the big Teslas, I imagine the battery is probably more than $20,000.
Yeah, it's a brave new world that we're coming into. I'll tell you, that's for sure.
Yeah. I still haven't seen any Tesla trucks on the road. Have you, Rico?
Well, Elon tweeted the other day that they had just completed one, but I don't think that anybody's actually received.
I wouldn't go to the bank on that one right now.
I mean, he's already broken the bank, and Mr. Musk, God love him. I mean, there's a guy who gives great advice.
Yeah.
By the way, to our friend who asked about the charge, to charge a car, an EV on a road trip is between $10 and $30.
How far road trip? Are we talking 500-mile road trip?
Guess what? Well, they now have batteries that can do 500 miles.
Wow.
Right. So they do have now, cars that go 500 miles on a charge. So you take the $30, you divide by 500 miles, you're not looking at a whole hell of a lot. But
no, again, that's like that's the old days when I started driving, many, many years ago. I don't want to give away my age, but does that also take into account when you're in weather like this and you've got headlights on, you've got cold weather? Does that not matter where you're driving? Because of course, my understanding has always been with batteries, they're not as resilient in the cold as they are in a warm climate.
Well, I don't have that data there yet, but I think what's going to happen is, again, they're going to solve those issues as they go along. Remember the old days we used to plug in our cars, right?
Well, they still do in Western Canada.
To keep the battery warm. Some batteries will last 10 years. Some batteries will last 15 years. It totally depends on how you drive. But I think also, the other component of an EV car, guys, don't forget, is the electronics. So I'm more concerned about the electronics than I am about the car, because if that sucker goes, well, then that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, your car today, if the electronics goes in your car, that's a $5,000 job. But in EV, it's the car.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely things are changing very quickly.
Yeah.
But all the manufacturers are jumping on board.
They had no choice. There's already laws passed that eliminate gas powered cars. By the way, remember all those guys, you drive diesel. Well, for 50 years, Europe said diesel is the only fuel. Well, right now, if you live in England and you have a diesel car, you pay a surcharge to own a diesel car.
Mike, I've been paying a surcharge to drive diesels for decades.
No, that I know. No, in Europe, if you own a diesel engine car, you pay an annual charge for owning a diesel engine car.
Is it like a pollution surcharge sort of thing?
Yeah, but this is for 50, 60, 70 years, it said diesel's the only fuel.
Right.
And then they outlawed it like that.
Well, and apparently in Europe now, where, I used to be amazed every time I went there, I would see cars like, the big Mercedes and Jaguars and all these other cars, BMWs, but the big ones were manual. And now I understand that there's a real push now to go to automatic on all these cars instead of manual, because the manufacturers have to guarantee so many, Europe is metric, so many kilometers per liter. And the only way they can come up with that is with an automatic transmission, because everybody drives manual differently.
Unless you live in Toronto, in which case everybody's on a bicycle.
Yeah.
we talked before a few shows back. It may have been last year. We kind of scratched the surface. We was talking about EVs and battery operated, and we were talking about the possibility of tax benefits, tax breaks. Of course, there's no truck. They haven't released we don't have a battery powered truck or anything right now. But do you have any more information about that, Mike? That maybe when that does come about, are there going to be incentives for trucking companies to make the transition?
Oh yeah. They'll come up with big incentives, big. Because right now it's again the technology. I mean, they're most of the EV market is focused on extending the passenger car, right,
and pickup trucks starting to go that way,
right? Yeah, I mean, so that's starting to climb up there, right? That's starting to climb up there. What's amazing though, I mean, when you look at some of these things like the Rivians and others, the torque is unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, 10,000 pounds of torque.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what I'm predicting, guys, is that we are headed for other fuels other than fossil fuels. That's the pressure's on
within 20 years. Within 20 years.
Yes, definitely. But I think that what will happen is it will be a user where now there's no tax really. There's no road tax being collected on electric vehicles. We will have toll systems throughout. Every time you get on a road, you're going to pay a toll. It'll be a user charge. The technology is, I'm watching. I was reading a book to my little grandson on trucking the other day, and somebody had given me, and the kid loves the book, and there was a toll collector in the book. And Boogie said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "It's a toll collector. We just got rid of them, but that's a man that charges you money, and now it's all automated. He'll never see a toll collector in his life. It's just things. So I really do think that with technology, every time you get, and not just on the highway, but every time you get on the road to use your car and go to the grocery store or drive your drive your wife to the dentist or whatever, you're going to there'll be a user charge."
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot bigger problems than that, by the way. So anybody who ever in the future thinks they're ever going to have an affair on their spouse, get rid of that. Your car is going to be spying on you. It'll be recording everything. There'll be an inboard camera. So forget it. Your spouse is going to know all of it. To our friend Gino, I'm actually more, again, if politicians want to get reelected, if they got a French kiss an alligator to get reelected, they're going to do it. So when it comes to the EVs, they're just going to pour a ton of money to get the truckers to switch over.
Whether they're owner operators or
right.
I don't think it. I think there'll be incentives for owner operators. I don't think that the government is blind to how strong the owner operator communities are in both our countries and the importance of those owner operator communities, and they've got to be looked after, because you know what, they're really the heart and soul of the supply chain. So whether I'm going to guess there'll be some grants. There'll probably be, if I was a politician, or I could influence a politician, and electric trucks do actually, they work the bugs out. I would say that what should probably happen is there should be low interest loans to incentivize the trucking community to adapt that technology.
Well, that's a trucking view, but I'm gonna tell you there's a bigger battle that's about to happen, right? And that is that the question becomes, of how the oil industry react to the power industry. So if you think of it all, as you said, Rico, earlier, the infrastructure in the United States is trillions of dollars underfunded, trillions, right? From Michigan, the water situation to the outages in Texas. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm going to tell you something. About 15 years ago, I'm listening to an interview with the head of Hydro Ontario, right? And here's what he said 15 years ago. He said, if 10% of a neighborhood plug in their cars, we're going to have a brownout.
Wow.
Because he said, August in Ontario is like being in the Mississippi in August. It's that freaking sticky. So you turn on the air conditioners and plug in the EVs, like, bruh. Okay. Now take the trucks, take all of it, and you go, well, hold on a second. This is hydropowered. Shell and those guys and Exxon, I'm going to just see you guys. It's been nice feeding you for a couple of hundred years. We're going to go on our merry way. Right. There's going to be a really big political battle between the oil companies and the power generation companies.
Well, it's going on right now, which is one of the reasons why the price of fuel is still so as high as it is still right now, because they don't feel any incentive. I mean, the government is basically trying to put these guys out of business, and they don't feel any incentive to help out to produce, to increase production, to drive price to try to help drive prices down.
Why would they?
What's in it for us?
They haven't built a refinery in the United States in something like 40 odd years since Jimmy Carter.
Well, I mean, they're not even up to capacity at the refineries that we do have. I mean, and they don't, and they don't have any incentive to increase.
Why would they?
Well, why would they? I mean, they see the end of the line coming, right? So the question really becomes now. That's to set the politicians. You got to keep a close eye here, which is the oil companies are going to want to get into the power generation companies because they feed cars, so they understand that business. And if your gas is going to be a battery instead of a pipe, well, then I'll just move that way. So I'm not, I think there's going to be a lot of it. But the real issue for the cities, and I think it's the cities, right, which is if you live in an apartment building, where are you going to charge your car?
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
Right? If you had on-street parking in New York City, what do you like? How am I going to charge my car?
Yeah, and places like that's a great question. I know that my sister-in-law, she just bought a condo down in not Miami, but down in Florida, and one of the things that she had built into her garage, she doesn't even have an EV, but she had a charging station built into it.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's where the infrastructure of the U.S. is in desperate shape. 50 years of neglect, desperate shape. But that's, again, let's take that as a positive, which means for the politicians, no more shaking hands, kissing babies, going away, making promises and delivering nothing. Now the EVs, ironically, are going to tell them where's the charging, where's the electrical lines, where's the grid, where is it? Don't give us any more Sunday morning pancake breakfast to get my vote. I got an EV. You made me buy an EV. I can't plug it in. It doesn't run. I can't do my air conditioning and my EV in my fridge. What am I going to do? Time to upgrade the whole system.
So, and now, Gino, to answer your question, from what I understand, but we don't have any. No one's actually taken delivery. But what I seen from Tesla when they were advertising their truck, that they're supposed to cost comparable to what it costs. With as much as the prices had went up over the pandemic, Tesla had advertised their trucks would be about between $110,000 and $150,000, which is about the same price as a regular conventional diesel powered truck right now. Now, whether or not they are going to be able to hold on to that pricing when those trucks actually hit the street or when they become available, that's a whole nother subject for another time, I would guess.
Oh no, there's a lot of other cars than that, right? I mean, you got the Rivian, you got Toyota's coming out with some powerful ones. Oh no, there's Mr. Musk has had a good run, but Mr. Musk took his eye off the ball. And by the way, let's be clear, This is a guy who advertised a bulletproof, foolproof truck, threw a bowling ball at the window, and it broke. Okay, somebody should throw a bowling ball at Mr. Musk. You know, because let's face it, the man just bought a $44 billion lemon. But I think there's.
Would you take his word on anything after he? You going to take any advice from this guy after he did that one?
I think from the moment he says hello, I got to start wondering.
Yeah.
You know, I think the only thing I could trust Mr. Musk is hello. After that, you know, but I think there's a lot better trucks than Tesla. Way better trucks than Tesla. I think Rivians are great. I think that, you know, Ford is coming out with some great stuff. GM's coming out with some great stuff.
They're not making. There's no talk of Ford and GM getting involved in Class 8 trucks anymore, is there?
What do you mean Class 8 trucks? I don't know what Class 8 trucks.
Big
tractor.
I don't know about that one.
I don't think they're getting back into that.
I think Tesla, and there's another company I think that starts with. Oh man, I can't think of.
I know there's one, but
there's another company, but they don't even have a prototype out. I don't
know. Packard, I believe, has come out with one.
How about Freightliner?
Yeah, I think they've got. Obviously,
they do have one.
It's Daimler.
No, they got one. It's called Escadia.
Yes,
Cascadia. It's actually a Freightliner truck.
Yeah.
So you see, they're moving there. Yeah, they're moving there.
I'm sure I've mentioned on the show, there's a brewery in California that's using them for regional deliveries. Very successful. Except the only problem is because it's California and they have to, power's expensive. They charge them for like 8 hours a night on a slow charge.
Man, I tell you,
that truck is down for 8 hours a night. So economically, it should be running another shift or most of another shift, and it's not. So I don't see the, I see the green saving. I don't see the economic saving.
Well, but the point is these guys are pouring millions of dollars. So I was just going to read you very quickly. The Freightliner, it's a Class 8, tandem drive 82,000 pounds, single drive 65,000 pounds, 425 horsepower engine. Single drive 320 horsepower. In other words, they're building it, man.
Yeah, but what's the range? It's fine if you're making deliveries in
230 miles.
230
miles. 230 miles.
Okay, so it's a regional truck.
Yeah, but the point is, they're doing it.
Yeah.
So the time has gotten we've blown through it. So
I don't know how that happens.
That's because I suck up all the air, man. There's just nothing left.
It's all good, Mike. So kind of
we love having you.
Give us I don't know, maybe put a bow on things for us until we can get a chance to get you back up on board. What are you thinking about?
I think what you do is keep a very look at your data, look at your top 80% clients, learn everything you can about them. And by the way, not just for caution, you may find out if you keep up to date with your clients, some of them might be winning big contracts, big expansion of business. You walk in to see your client, you tell them, hey, Chuck, just heard you guys landed a massive new contract out on the West Coast. What can I do to help?
Yep.
Yeah, right? That goes a long way.
If you learn about your clients, you go and you tell them, I'm reading about you, you're important to me. Guess what? You'll pick up more business.
100%.
Because if you don't, your buddy will. The guy next door who's reading it is going to walk in and take it away from you.
Yeah, it's real nice to. There's an old book out there somewhere. If I can suggest our listeners, you can probably get it so that you can listen to it while you're driving. The author is Harvey McKay, and the book is How to Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive. It's about a 30-year-old book. And in there, he talks about getting to know your customer. And this guy, I'll just be real quick. He bought an envelope company somewhere like in Topeka, Kansas. Not sexy at all, but he made it sexy by just growing it and doing very well and making a lot of money with it.
I'll throw another good suggestion for a book, and maybe not as long as the one Chuck suggested, but a very, very, very practical book. Who Moved My Cheese? I can't tell you. I don't know who the author is.
Great
Who
book.
Moved My Cheese?
It's a very famous book.
Absolutely great book. And for times like this, you definitely got to be willing to know how to be nimble and know how to adjust on the fly if need be. And that's one of the benefits that we have as small guys, as small small fleet owners. We have the ability to be nimble. We can move quickly. We don't have a big behemoth operation, so we can address a lot of things that customers may need a lot quicker than maybe some of the bigger carriers can handle, as long as it's within your service criteria. And you may even think about expanding your service criteria where there's an opportunity there. So with all that being said, Michael, you want to let the good people know if they would like to, or if you want to, how they can get in contact with you if they got a question. If you
got questions, like if you got markets questions, economics questions, things you just want to get it, happy to send over some data. Michael.lampel@gmail.com. Michael.lampel@gmail.com. Listen, always happy to share information. Always want people to succeed in business, do well, and you know what? At the end of the day, if you just stay up to date with your clients, you'll make good money. You'll make a good living. You just don't want the surprise those poor folks got at the furniture place.
Great. Sage advice, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, Chuck.
By the way, I have a lot of books next to my bed. It holds up my beer.
One thing we can count on for Mike, he definitely got he's got the wisecracks. He comes.
Yes, but they're good ones.
You get information in a comedy show when Mike comes.
Exactly. Comedy club.
Hold on a second. So you see my bank account also? Okay. I'm waiting for the guy to break into my bank account and leave the money there.
I think we all are.
Yeah, if anybody needs to get in touch with me, just easiest way, send me an email, chuck@traffix, TRAFFIX.com, and put your phone number in it. And just a heads up, everybody, I will be working the Traffix booth over at Matt's coming up in March. I love that show, and I'll be there. So if any of our listeners get to Louisville, which is an incredible show, come on by and see us. And I'll talk more about the show later on as we get towards March. But with that, Rico, I'm going to let you back her in a hole for another week.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. That helps us out tremendously. Helps us get the show out to a broader audience. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Share the show. If you find this information a little bit helpful for you, you enjoyed it, share it with someone. We definitely, that's our sincere ask of you. And other than that, we want to thank you guys for taking time out to listen. We definitely appreciate you for doing so. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you took a little bit of time to hang out with us, and we're always eternally grateful for you doing so. So for my co-host, Chuck Snow, I'm Rico Muhammad. This has been the Rates and Lanes podcast. We want to thank our guest, Michael Lampel, for being so gracious with his time. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe out there. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at your same time, same place next week.
Be safe. Take care. Have a great week.
Catch you on the flip-flop. God bless.